The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette. Big thanks to Ukla the Mock for their theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in to our show. We back after a brief hiatus. We were away while I was on stage with Hubtown Theater. We had done I co-directed and starred as the creature in the stage version of Frankenstein, written by Nick Deere. Very literal adaptation of the original Mary Shelley novel. Original version of this was done in England. Danny Boyle directed it, and it starred Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller. This is like 10, 11 years ago. And I was so taken with it when I saw it. I always thought it'd be really cool to do on stage here in my home theater, and thankfully we got to do it. But it was quite the undertaking. Co-directing and being in it was a lot to do, a lot of work, and not just work at rehearsals, but also behind the scenes, preparing music, preparing ideas for costumes, organizing things like that. And it took a lot. And unfortunately, with all the other things I do, hosting trivia, wrestling, hosting movie nights, being on the other podcast, X-Rated, the X-Men Anime Review Show, I didn't really have time to get these interviews in and to get some proper editing in. Unfortunately, so I had to step back and take a little break in order to make my theater dreams of making that play come true a reality, and I did. And we had rave reviews. It was very well received. A lot of people reached out and thanked us for doing something different, for doing something really adult, something with complex themes, and I was very proud of it. Very, very proud. And there's pictures out there on the hubtowntheater.ca and a few other sites as well, my personal Facebook page as well, if you're on there. But yeah, I'm insanely proud of this production, and I think to someday maybe make doing more of these types of shows reality. So hopefully I won't have to take time away again from the show for a while. But I was very proud of that production and very happy it was done. Today's guest is, of course, John Russo. I know after the break I wanted to come back hard, come back strong, bring back a big guest, and I was very thankful to get John. John was here on the East Coast filming a little independent horror film, and one of the organizers of that, David Boyce, who's an associate of mine, made the connection so that I could have him on the show. I had met him. They did a double bill at a local brewery here in Halifax called Propeller Brewery of a couple horror movies there on Halloween, leading up to Halloween. They showed Ernest Scared Stupid and Pumpkinhead. But also, John was there selling signed scripts and other memorabilia from Night of the Living Dead. As I think I forgot to mention, he is the co-creator and writer of Night of the Living Dead, which he co-created with George Romero, which is quite the legacy. That movie has a huge impact on me. I'm a massive fan of the Dead series, and none of that would be possible without the amazing first movie, Night of the Living Dead, co-created by those two gentlemen and a few other folks as well, which John talks about in the interview. But yeah, quite a legacy. That movie changed horror films. It changed zombies depictions in modern cinema. It changed a lot of things when it comes to the macabre in film. And John was a huge part of that. So I was very excited to sit down and chat with him. We had a few audio problems just on his end with his computer or whatever. But I did meticulously go through the interview and try to amplify any of the things that were low in volume. I believe I did a pretty good job. Unfortunately, I can't do any better than I did. So there are maybe a few strange noises, and there may be a few dips in the volume of the interview, but I think it came through. I didn't want to scrap it because it was such a great interview, and I certainly wanted you people to hear it. So I worked pretty tirelessly to get it up to snuff, and I think I did an okay job. But, it's well worth it to listen because John has some amazing stories and a lot of insight in Night of the Living Dead, its creation, its legacy, and some of the other aspects that came with it in his career going forward. So I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun and a little stressful on my part because he is a hero of mine. So to sit down and chat with him for about an hour was was a daunting task, but he thankfully he's probably used to doing these interviews, and he gave a lot of insight and kind of took the reins and led us through. So, big thanks to John for doing that, and big thanks to Dave for making that possible. But we are leading into the holiday season. We are into November now, so that means Christmas is just around the corner. I'm sure the Mariah Carey "All I Want for Christmas Is You" is already blaring in a local shop near you. I'd gone to the mall yesterday, which is like literally the day after Remembrance Day. So November here in Canada, our Memorial Day is called Remembrance Day, and we have it on November 11th. And yeah, it's literally the next day, November 12th, is when all the Christmas stuff was up at the mall. All the music was playing, all the decorations, ads for Santa, everything. So we've arrived. It is here. I do love Christmas. It's one of my favorite times of the year, so I'm excited about that. But I'm also very excited for you to see the lineup of folks that are coming down the pipeline for future interviews. It's going to be a great kickoff to Season 4 of the Graphic Histories podcast. But why wait? Why wait any longer? Let's just get right into our interview with co-creator of Night of the Living Dead, John Russo.
I grew up in a mill town about half hour from downtown Pittsburgh called Clairton, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow. And were you always
I'm not too far from there right now.
Didn't make it out too far, huh? So were you always, were you a big reader when you were a kid?
What?
Did you read a lot when you were a kid?
I read, by fourth grade, I was reading Mark Twain. Among other things, I loved Huckleberry Finn, the Tom Sawyer books, and I remember reading a Coronet magazine. I remember they had a big article on travel to outer space, and the teacher wanted us to bring books in for a little classroom library, and I brought some of those books in, and she told me to take them home because they were beyond the other kids' capacity.
Oh, wow.
So that's stuck in my brain.
So even early on, you were kind of reaching towards the fantastical, like science fiction and that sort of stuff?
Not really. I never read a whole lot of science fiction. Later I read some, but I'm not really into that all that much. I was intrigued by the idea that we might be able to get to other planets someday. I was more intrigued by reality things like how science's ability to explore the universe and perhaps planets and other life forms. I'm still intrigued by that. And that's more possible now than it used to be.
Yeah, very interesting. That's very cool. So when you were growing up, were you into writing? Were you starting to write? When did you become a writer?
Well, in fourth grade, I wasn't writing much at that point. But we had a substitute teacher around that same time, and she wanted us to write a poem. So I wrote the first poem that I ever wrote. And the substitute teacher went around the class looking at them, and she couldn't believe that I didn't. She accused me of copying that poem out of one of the books. So she spent the whole rest of most of the day, she spent looking through the books in the library and the other school books that we had, trying to find the poem, which she did not find because I didn't copy it from anywhere. And so I guess I got an inkling that I might be a pretty good writer back then. And then by the time I was, of course, as you went through high school, you had to write more themes and book reports and things like that. So I wrote a bit more. I started reading mystery novels and John D. MacDonald and so on. And I did write a mystery short story that wasn't much. It was maybe about 4 pages. By the time I was ready to graduate from high school, I really didn't want to go to work for anybody else. And so I thought I would write a mystery novel, and it didn't get very far because at that point I lacked the craftsmanship. And then when I got into college, I was doing more writing and writing more themes and term papers and so on. And by the time I was graduating from college, I was during my student teaching class when I was supposed to be operating, watching, observing the other student teacher and so on. I didn't see that my observing was doing her much good. So I started writing a novel about my college days in a three-wing tablet. And I did finish that novel, but again, it had a lot of good things in it, but it didn't have the craftsmanship that I developed later.
And how did you develop? Was it just keeping at it, keeping writing?
You have to just, if you're going to be a writer, you have to keep writing. Everybody tells you that, and it's true.
I once heard someone say that writing is mostly just attacking, not writing. So what led you into, like, I know you eventually, did you meet George in college? Is that where you two met?
I was in my first year at West Virginia University, and my good friend Rudy Ritchie, who also wanted to be a writer, there weren't that many people around that talked about being writers in Clinton, Pennsylvania, although we had one of the top high schools in the nation at that point. But Rudy enrolled in Carnegie Tech, which is now Carnegie Mellon University. And his first day there, he met George Romero because it was Romero and Ritchie were right close to each other in line to register for their classes. And so they were in, and Rudy called me up and he said, when you come back for Christmas vacation, you have to meet this great guy, George Romero. He said, we're standing in line to register wearing our freshman beanies, which we threw away not too long after that. And we're in a life class. And instead of drawing the nude model, George is drawing scenes from Ben-Hur. Right. So when I came home, Rudy had a 55 Plymouth convertible, and we jumped in it and went down to pick up George at his apartment in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh, not far from Carnegie Tech. And he came down on the sidewalk. Rudy honked the horn, and George came down on the sidewalk wearing a big sombrero, a big black drooping mustache, and bandoleros full of ammunition and two pistolas on his hips. And we were so cool. We didn't say a word about it. He got in the car and we went to get ice cream. And the girl slammed the window shut and wouldn't wait on us. So we just got a big laugh out of that. And Rudy said, you should have seen him last week. He was covered head to toe in tinfoil. There was some kind of alien 1950s science fiction movie where it had, I always forget which one it was.
The Day the Earth Stood Still?
Huh?
The Day the Earth Stood Still?
I don't know. That was Michael Rennie, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Well, anyway, there was a metallic and alien that came to Earth in this movie, and but the reason George was wearing the sombrero and all that was because one of his favorite movies was Viva Zapata, which is a really great movie starring Marlon Brando. Yeah, I didn't see it till years after that, and but it's a fabulous movie. John Steinbeck wrote the screenplay. So George often did that. He'd dress up, like the characters that he liked. And he was in, I think he was in a Pittsburgh production of Cyrano de Bergerac, and so he came out one day wearing a cape and. No, that was when he played the the killer in a Victorian melodrama, and he came when we met. We both met Russ Striner. George came to a play that Russ was in. It was at Pittsburgh Playhouse, and he was wearing a cane and a cape. And spouting some of his lines from that play, but he used to often spout lines from Cyrano, and he got a big kick out of that. We all did. George was great. George was very entertaining. Everybody liked him.
Yeah, he sounds like quite the character. So when did you guys start working together on scripts?
We didn't very much. I mean, we did our own thing. I was at WVU, and George and Rudy were in Pittsburgh, and eventually George said we could make movies. He had some experience as a grip or a gopher or something on a couple of movies in New York. I remember one of them was a Kim Novak movie called Bell Book and Candle, and I don't think he did much, but he started making 8mm films when he was about 14 and got arrested for firing a burning body off of the apartment building where he and his family lived. So we just thought all of that was just zany fun. And then before I got out of college, George and Rudy and an actor friend of ours, Ray Lane, teamed up to make a film called Expostulations, using a 16mm Bolex and some money that George's uncle had, about $2,000 that George's uncle put up. And it was a series of comic vignettes, and I helped out every chance I could get in the summers and on vacations. So, and the movie never got a soundtrack put on it, but it was pretty damn funny. There were a lot of really funny and well done things in it. But they were left with the Bolex camera, and they incorporated the Latent Image Inc., which was our company for a long, long time, all the way through Night of the Living Dead and George's later movies, going into the 80s. So that's how it all got started. When I went into the Army when they were forming the Latent Image, and when I got out, I joined them. So I taught school for a couple of years, and then George said, come and work for us. So that's what I did.
So how did the script for Night of the Living Dead work? Was it like he gave you the idea and you put pen to paper, or was it a collaboration the whole way through?
It was George and I were the two writers of the group, so it was kind of a foregone. Rudy was busy writing a novel, and he had landed an agent. He was totally into that novel, and he wasn't full-time at the Latent Image. He helped out when he could. But George and I, it ended up that we were beating ideas around. I said, I think whatever we do, there were some false starts, but then we decided it had to be a horror film, and so because we didn't have hardly the money to do anything, but especially not saucer landings and that kind of thing. So we said, well, it has to be some kind of low budget horror. And actually, it was my idea to do the movie. And I said, we ought to be able to do something better than the poorly made Mexican El Cheapos that were showing up on Chiller Theater at night. And they were so bad that sometimes you could see tube force sticking out of the monster. So I said, whatever we do ought to start in the cemetery, because people find cemeteries spooky, and even in Abbott and Costello and me, Dracula, it's funny, but it's scary at the same time. So I started writing a thing, again, because we couldn't afford showing a saucer landing, but I still had the idea to do something with aliens. So I started writing a script where these kids are in a cemetery at night, and it's Halloween night. One of them's wearing a ghoul mask, actually, and they've stolen a case of beer, and they're going to hide it somewhere in the cemetery. and they get caught. And the one kid gets punished. He gets grounded, but he runs away from home. And he while he's running with his few belongings through the woods, he steps through a pane of glass in the ground. And under that pane of glass is a rotting corpse. And my idea was, well, we can't show them landing, but what if they're already here?
Mm.
And they're killing Earth people and putting them under glass like a hothouse tomato thing. And they like them a little rotted, like medieval people used to shoot a turkey and hang it up and let it rot for a few days before they cooked it. So I was doing that, and then George came in around Christmas, just before Christmas, and he had written about 20 or 30 pages of a script that started in a cemetery and had a girl and her brother visiting her father's grave, and this strange guy starts chasing them and bashes the brother's head against the tombstone and chases the girl and so on. And I read it and I said, well, George, I said, this is all good. I said, it has the right twists and turns and suspense, but who's chasing this girl? You don't say. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, seems to me they could be dead people. He said, that's good. And I said, but you don't say what they're after. They don't claw, they don't bite. He said, I don't know. I said, why don't we use my flesh eating idea? So that's how they became dead people after human flesh. And we beat some ideas around, which ended up being mostly my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
George didn't come up with much after that, even in script conferences. And I think it was because he was kind of ripping off Matheson and, I Am Legend, which I had never read, so I wasn't aware of that. And I kind of unwittingly bailed him out because I then took the lead in developing the plot, the characters, and so on. And I rewrote what he wrote, and then I wrote the whole rest of the script myself.
Oh, interesting. So I remember reading somewhere that Romero kind of said it was like his theme for it was that it was people that, like, in a crisis situation, people could never get along with each other. And we like, even when struck together, we all couldn't get along and it would just fall apart. Was that something that was inspired through you, like through your time in the war, or is that just something that came together through a theme he wanted?
People in the house not getting along.
Yeah.
Once you have the characters, you have to make them behave in character. And so that's what I was doing. And that's what I took the lead in doing in the script sessions. And there weren't too many ideas from anyone except me. Mm-hmm. And The Escape, for example, I mean, I said they have to try to escape, and the escape has to fail, or else the movie's over in 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So if the escape's going to fail, how is it going to fail? Nobody said anything, and I said, well, we have the young couple that are kind of naive. We have the girl that's catatonic. She's not going to be much help. We have the couple in the basement. And we have the hero, Ben. And so they're going to try to figure out what do they have at their disposal to help them escape. And maybe they'll find kerosene in the basement. Maybe they'll find a key to that gas pump, et cetera, and then just working it out. And what's Harry going to do? When the young couple gets blown up in the truck, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, he's the coward that wants to go to the basement, so he's going to run to the basement. And if he slams that door shut and locks it, Ben can't get in. And if Ben does kick the door in, what's he going to do? Nobody said anything. Said, well, he's going to kick Harry's ass. So that's how it went. And then I took all that and wrote it in the script. A lot of years later, like when I teach writing courses or lectures or whatever, and I point out what occurred to me later. I didn't have it in my mind when we were doing this, but Night of the Living Dead is sort of stagecoach with zombies instead of Indians. And you have the issue is, are these people going to cooperate and survive, or are their shortcomings going to cause their downfall? In Stagecoach, you have the anti-hero sort of Johnny Ringo, you know, the gunslinger. You got the prostitute, you got the doctor, who's a drunk, and so on. And in Night of the Living Dead, you have the hero, and you have the catatonic girl, and a young couple, and the hard-headed son of a bitch in the basement, Trump. I mean Cooper. That's just how I say it when I'm lecturing, because son of a bitch, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes I start off by, you know, Ray Kroc, when he would lecture in colleges, he'd start out asking, he said, what business is McDonald's in? And people would say, hamburgers, selling hamburgers or whatever, you know, egg McMuffins. No, we're in real estate. McDonald's owns every franchise, every piece of property that the franchises are on all over the world. How rich is that? What's Night of the Living Dead about? And people want to say zombies. No. Zombies are an aspect of the plot. Mm-hmm. But what's the theme? Every script, every book or movie has to have a theme that then determines the plot, the characters, and everything else. So the theme is, are these people going to, it's human survival and cooperation or lack thereof. So, and the same theme is explored in The Thing, mm-hmm. or Alien, or Zulu, or any number of movies, you know, and which I absolutely hated the theme, and I absolutely hated Day of the Dead. Why? Because I thought, I was on that location, I thought George had a hell of a thing going there. And I thought, I mean, Laurie Cargill had a charisma, she was a good actress, just a perfect setup. If there would have been sympathetic characters that were trying to get out of that cave, and you didn't know around any bend whether they're going to run into a crazy army guy or a zombie, you would have had something. But no, it's a whole movie with everybody yelling and screaming and cursing at each other. And that's what it is. And The Thing is exactly the same. So it's a total cop-out. It's like, it for a long time from the mid-'80s on, it was sort of a badge of, hey, I'm making a feature film. I'm going to play in theaters, not on television. So I got to have nudity and I got to have a lot of cursing. So, but I often point out, you know, at one point there was a Russian astronaut crashing to the Earth, and their bodily functions were being monitored as they fell to Earth. And their statistics, their measurements of their bodily functions didn't vary all the way down to their deaths. When you have a scientist chosen to be on an Arctic state substation or whatever, they're chosen for their ability to keep their heads about them, to be calm in emergencies and all that. They're not going to all fall to pieces and scream and yell and curse at each other. So when things go to hell in a handbasket, it's not because people are screaming and yelling at each other. It's because people in suits and ties that seem to be rational people are making all the wrong decisions for the wrong reasons. Mm. So that's why I don't like those movies, and I don't like any movie that's like that. It's just, they're just not.
It's an easy way out. So the theme of that about people not being able to communicate or work together, is that something that was influenced by your time in the army, or is that something that you just because you saw so
No,
much of that? No.
that's about my time in life.
No.
I mean, it's the same theme. Yeah, it's the same exact theme that we're going through now. I mean, we got total fucking nutcases that deny elections, deny global warming, think the Earth was formed 6,000 years ago. All like crap. And because of them, we're all in danger of not surviving much longer. So that's the battle. Are we going to cooperate? Are they going to become enlightened? I really doubt it.
Yeah, God, me too.
And so, the whole world's in jeopardy of not being able to harbor human life much longer.
I agree. It's November right now, and it was 26 degrees here, which is
By
like
the way,
incredibly
George
warm.
and I are all on the same page, politically, culturally, and socially.
Mm.
We all have those same opinions. We always had really great conversations, intellectual type conversations, and conversations about the arts and politics and everything that should concern at least the more enlightened people on Earth.
Agreed. So I noticed you worked with George afterwards on There Was Always Vanilla. What was that experience like?
Uh, well, Russ and I were the producers on it. It's a good example of how well and we produced things in those days, everything from the lowliest commercial to industrial films to feature films. That's a very good picture of what the 70s were really like.
Mm.
The script is not as good as it should have been. Rudy got very stubborn and pissed off, and Rudy became the type of person that Ted Turner had a sign on his desk: either lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy didn't lead, didn't follow, and didn't get out of the way either. Reasons. And he just would not come up with the kind of script that he was capable of coming up with.
Mm.
He just kind of blew it off and hated it, and couldn't reason with him.
Well,
So,
it's a great example of
it didn't have the magic.
well, I always find it's a great example of, you're right, as a timepiece for the 70s, but also like it shows some of the range you guys had, and I know you get shoehorned in the zombie box so much. Oh, I think it shows the range of what you guys are capable of doing.
George and I wanted, and Russ too, we didn't want to get pigeonholed right from the jump. We wanted to follow Night of the Living Dead with another type movie, and show, because we considered ourselves filmmakers, not just horror filmmakers. Mm. George said that once on a program called Iconoclast. He said, when you say you're going to be a filmmaker, you don't say you're going to be a horror filmmaker. You say you're going to be a filmmaker. Look what Sam Raimi's done. Those guys are great. They were inspired by Night of the Living Dead to do Evil Dead. They wanted to do comedies. And they're great stand-up comedians. Rob Tappert and Sam Raimi, I saw them together once on stage. They were hilarious. But look at what they've done. Their range is all over the place.
Agreed. Yeah, I noticed that it seems like,
great if you can make a lot of money and then have somewhat of the freedom to do other things and not always be pigeonholed.
Do you feel like you had those opportunities?
I had opportunities to do other kinds of things, but I never had the money that I needed to do them right. And everybody, for one thing, people would always say, is Romero going to be part of it? And I never got pissed off. I always rooted for George and wanted him to succeed. We had been in the trenches together and so on, but it's just a reality of the business that he was the director, and the director gets the credit and the blame a lot of times. And most of the directors, when something they do fails, they blame it all on the studio.
Yeah.
George did the same thing with Day of the Dead. No, he didn't have enough money and this and that bullshit.
Yeah.
$2.5 million, and he had everything he needed to make a better movie than what he did. But the one that I read an article he did, I came across an interview he did in 2009, and he said I could have been a superstar if I would have not always bet. I don't play roulette, but something. I always bet on the black or something, which he meant to say that I didn't take enough chances. Oh, that's a horse shit. I've done all kinds of unique things. My work is nothing if not unique, except the average budget of my film is a few $100,000. The average budget of his films is $2 or $3 million. Big goddamn difference.
Yeah. Well, you've tried your hand in a lot of different formats too.
I agree with him on one thing. I could have been a superstar. And in a way, I am.
I think you are, absolutely. I mean, people forget. You're right about people thinking the director is the only one who has anything to do with it, but the writer is a huge part.
That's why people, over in France, they thought Jerry Lewis was a genius.
So you've written books and movies and like television. You've done a lot of things. So what is your preferred format? Do you prefer books? Do you prefer scripts?
Well, I don't have a preference. Making movies is more social, and it's a whole different enterprise. So writing is a solitary thing. You're in a cubicle and you're in front of a screen, and when you do that long enough, it's a breath of fresh air to get out and make a movie. When you make a movie and you have to contend with all the different personalities and the backstabbers and the bullshit, you're ready to well, first of all, I'm ready to start editing, which is what I really like, because you have the whole ball of wax in your hand, and you don't have to worry about the airplanes screwing up the sound take and all the other crap. And lost my train of thought there. But
so editing, you prefer editing. That's very interesting.
Get away from, finish the movie and go back to writing, or at least be in the editing room. And I do the whole thing. I'm a really good cameraman and editor, but I don't do that so much. I seldom do camera work, but I call the shots. I'm the one that blocks the action, and I do the director, not directing. I'm a hands-on director, and I don't do what George does. It makes me laugh. Just the other day, some actor was repeating the same old tired bullshit about how George he lets people do what they're going to do. Well, yeah, because he doesn't have the balls to direct them. I mean, he takes what they give him and he figures he can fix it on the editing table. And I don't do that. I mean, actors can be directed for, Debbie Rochon, where are you? Are you in Nova Scotia?
I am, yep.
Debbie Rochon lives there now, and she's one of my favorite people to work with. And she should have been a big star. She's really, really good. And I've put her in several of my movies. And I was shooting a scene for Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an low budget movie. We made it for $40,000. By the way, it's coming out. It's being re-released. I just did commentary tracks, but like Debbie's on the phone in the middle in a scene that has a lot to do with moving the plot along. I don't remember if she's terrified or what state she's in, but she did a great job with her lines there. And then I said, no, I said, let's do another take. And this time just knock it down about a quarter of a turn. And she did it exactly. She's very intelligent. She knows exactly what you're driving at. And she can fine tune her performance according to what the director tells her. Or according to what she wants to do. You know, she's a critique of her own performance. So if she wants to do another take and do it with less emoting, or a little less emotive, then she'll do it. But so what's the point of just, you know? But if you're famous enough, you get credit for being a genius, even if what you did wasn't so genius-like.
Well, I've like recently. I know you were involved with the 30th remaster of the Night of the Living Dead series that you directed and recut it in a different format. What was that process like to go back so long after?
After it was done, Debbie said, "Can you put me in Casablanca now?" Well, we had a hell of a lot of fun doing it, and I think it was one hell of a good job. People don't realize Anchor Bay paid us $200,000 to do that. We can't turn those deals down.
Oh no!
Shareholders were obligated to, make money for the shareholders, but also I wanted to do it. And I called George up and I said, we have this chance to do this, and I said, I'm just going to ask you not to block it because we got to get it done. And he said, no. He said, we'll. I said, what do you want to do then? I thought he might want to direct it or whatever. He said, let's just do it the same as last time. So we'll both do the writing, and I think he said he would direct. Then he got involved in another project, so he couldn't do it. So then I did it. So, and we used most of the money to totally remaster the original movie in state and the soundtrack and the picture in the state of the art method that was available then, before digital and everything. So we didn't damage the old picture. We gave it a new rebirth at that point.
Absolutely.
But Doug, what was his name? Jay Douglas. He was the producer for Anchor Bay, and when he said, I must say, he said, you've done something very few filmmakers been able to do. He said, George Lucas did it with Star Wars, and now you've done it with Night of the Living Dead. That's absolutely seamless, which was true. So then George came on and trashed it.
Did that sour your relationship? I assume?
With it and said, praised it or just kept quiet, it would have performed better. But the other thing was Anchor Bay, they pulled all of their I forget what their top prints came out. They were all out of sync. They went out into the market out of sync, so that damaged it. And another thing, you get burned in different ways when you make a movie. And Vince Guastini, he's a really good special effects guy. And he got all excited and said, well, I'll make a mask of Heinzman, and I'll make him, he can wear it, and he'll look like he looked 30 years ago and all that. But he didn't. The mask was a mask, and it had no movement. We'd have been better off if we didn't have a mask, but he had he could have the facial expressions that he had way back when. You don't know that. But the other thing about that is it was a sales point in dealing with Anchor Bay. That looks good on paper, guess what? We'll have the money to hire a good special effects guy. He'll make this mask and we'll do this and we'll do that. It probably helped move them to to put up the 200,000, but then you get burned down the other end, you know.
Yeah, that's
So
the way.
a lot of things like that happen that people aren't aware of it. People aren't in the business.
Oh, it's very interesting to learn because a lot of people have such reverence for your film that to know those intricate details that you don't really hear normally. It's very interesting.
We did the same thing with Midnight, my movie Midnight, which I didn't have very much money to make that movie. And I said, you know, the mother is going to be, 15 or 20 years later, the kids are grown up, and the mother is embalmed, but she's still part of their witchcraft ceremonies, and people have to recognize her and realize, shockingly, that these are those same kids grown up. I'll make this mask. He said, when people are embalmed, their skin turns black and this and that. And I said, Tom, they have to be able to recognize her. Oh, they will, but her skin will be black and all this. And I had my doubts, but he's going on with Tom. Tom has great enthusiasm for sometimes misplaced. And so he shows up and he's putting this mask on Jackie Nickel, the actress, and it took him hours and hours and hours, and I'm losing shooting time, and then you can't recognize her. I showed the movie to George in his office, and whenever the Black Mass stuff started, he said, "Who are those people?" Well, I think but he was actually on the phone at the same time, not giving it his full attention. But obviously, most people still probably get it.
Yeah.
Because the movies are cult classic. The movie's really pretty good, even though I only had $70,000 to make it, and that was 35 millimeter all the way, and that was paying Lawrence Tierney, and that was doing a mix at Magno Sound in New York, and all the way to an answer print for $70,000, and basically me and three guys.
Well, I don't want to take any more of your time, John. I really want to say it's been a real honor talking to you, and I can't thank you enough for talking with me.
Oh, well.
I'm a huge fan. I know you probably hear this all the time of the original Night of the Living Dead and many of your some of your other works as well. And I just want to thank you so much for everything you've done and everything you're going to do.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, John. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
There it is, my interview with co-creator of Night of the Living Dead, John Russo. What a fun little talk, a lot of insight, and interesting. You hear about collaborators, people that created these big things over the years, and sometimes it's interesting as to how those relationships continue, how they still work, how they end maybe, how they go on, especially when it's seemingly one kind of goes in a different direction than the other, as it came to with this pairing. So it's interesting to hear how that relationship worked and how it continued to work, and where it went as the years went on. It's life has a way of sending people in different directions, and it was interesting to hear John's side of the tale and exactly what he felt about George and their relationship together. I often felt I didn't want to continually ask him questions about George because, as someone who collaborates with someone else, you don't want to just constantly ask them about their partner, as it seems a bit insulting to their work and their legacy and what they've created by themselves. But it seemed as though John, was eager to talk about George, or at least clarify some of the opinions relating to him and George's working relationship. So I was happy that he was so open and candid, I guess, with me and with you, the listener, as to those stories and how that relationship was. So yes, I was very happy with that conversation, and hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it bringing it to you. In the next episode, we'll be talking with Marvel comic artist Jason Liu, who is a big part of some of the recent stuff going on in some comics. Very excited to talk to Jason Big fan of his work, and big thanks to David Cutler for making that a reality. But if you're tuning into this, you may perhaps know me from the X-Men Animated Review Show, also known as X-Rated, the X-Men Animated Review Show. We have new episodes every Tuesday. Make sure to check us out on social media. There are links on the webpage, graphichistories.com, and all over social media. So my co-host Davin is very prolific with getting the word out there, and it's a great show. If you like the X-Men Animated Review Show from Fox in the 90s, basically Davin and I watch episodes of the show, review it, and have a lot of fun along the way. It's been a great show. We're midway, actually we're a little further than midway through season 3. So we're chugging along, and it's been a real fun adventure this whole time. And speaking of which, the Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts, a nice little umbrella group of other podcasters of like mind who are out there doing their thing, and we're kind of incorporated under an umbrella. So I met these gentlemen through Davin, through our other show, X-Rated, and because of that, I decided, well, why not? Why not bring myself under that umbrella and hopefully get some more attention, some more ears to listen to my particular brand of podcasting, and hopefully, if so, and you are here because of that, thank you. And if not, go and check out those other podcasts. There's Live Long and Podcasts. There's a bunch of really good ones under the umbrella of the United Federation of Podcasts, so check them out. But in the meantime, thank you very much for returning. Welcome back. I'm very happy you're back, and I'm very happy to have you with me. And I will see you in a couple weeks for my interview with Jason Liu. In the meantime, stay safe, have fun, and don't do anything I wouldn't do, which means you're wide open.